excellent speaker and friend. So thank you.
Kristen. Wow, this is a much bigger room than the last time I was here, and a little bit more intimidating being up here. And I also don't have my big fan in the front row, who was my son last year, because he is in Lisbon studying a renewable energy policy. So as I said last year, that apple fell right at my foot and didn't roll anywhere. So wonderful to be here today. And when I was invited to come and speak again, I thought, well, what am I gonna talk about this year? And what really impressed me about this event last year was how it was for us. It's for the practitioners. It's about being real and being realistic. And so I thought, maybe I should focus on some of the things I've learned over actually nearly 35 years in this space, 40 if you count the time I worked at the beach as a badge checker. And if you indulge me, I want to share some of the things I've learned along the way. And I've broken this up into a couple parts. The first part will be, some reflections of the roles that I've had and how it shaped my leadership style. And then I'll talk about some examples of projects that I've worked on and that I've been a part of, and how those have shaped my leadership style. And then I have a little bit of a rapid fire portion at the end. So I have to start with Johnson & Johnson, and because this is my context. Almost 30 years of my career have been with Johnson & Johnson, a healthcare innovator, improving people's lives, and that purpose really, really hooked me 29 years ago when I joined the company. Had no intention of staying that long. This was a pit stop, but in the end, just really fell in love with the purpose and the people in this organization. Our focus in environmental sustainability, this is built on, by the way, a ton of effort that goes into compliance, managing risks, kind of the bread and butter of environmental work. And then these are the areas where we make choices, right? Where we decide that we're gonna lean in and we wanna do some special, meaningful, impactful work. The first is around decarbonizing our operations and our value chain. The second is around circularity. We're really focusing on circularity when it comes to the sustainability of our product portfolio. And then this third area is all about collaboration and what role can we play in the bigger healthcare ecosystem to improve the sustainability of the entire healthcare system. Couple clicks. Okay, so I'm going to kind of take you through my career journey. And as we kind of go along, I'm going to touch on some of the things that I learned along the way. So my first job, coming out of college with a biology degree, required a yellow Tyvek suit and supplied air on my back and 40 hours of HAZWOPER training. And they said, go out and figure out what's going on this abandoned waste site. And I took the groundwater samples, I took the soil samples, and it was there that I was inspired to try to prevent what I was seeing all around me. I didn't want to be the one in the yellow Tyvek suit. I wanted to be the one writing wonderful policy that would prevent this from happening in the future. So I went back to graduate school, I got a degree in environmental policy, and en route to DC, I made that now infamous pit stop at Johnson & Johnson. And I turned in my yellow Tyvek suit for a clipboard. I was the person with the clipboard, walking around the manufacturing site that I was assigned to and making sure that all the hazardous waste drums were off-site within 90 days. They were 18 inches apart and inspected on a daily basis. I was the one who checked all of our emergency generators and made sure that they were run within the air permit requirements that we had for those. I was the one that went down to the wastewater treatment facility and made sure everything was working and that we submitted our discharge monitoring reports on time. I was on the ground doing the compliance work. And this job, this is why I describe my leadership style first and foremost as pragmatic. I learned what it takes to actually get stuff done on a manufacturing floor with all the different functions that have to help you get that work done. Super, super important part of my career. And then I went to the dark side, corporate headquarters, but that gave me the opportunity to kind of really zoom out for the first time in my career to the world. And one of the most impactful projects, I was really fortunate. I had an advocate who advocated for me to co-lead this project, despite the fact I did not have a ton of experience to do so. And I worked with a partner from our quality organization to define our first code of conduct for our suppliers. And I credit this experience to my second leadership attribute, which is empathy. I learned how to listen. I went around the world and I met with our suppliers, small, medium, large, and I listened and I realized that the barriers to entry when it came to sustainability were really high for them. And I realized how important it was to try to lower those barriers, not lower our standards, but lower the barriers to participation. So again, another incredibly pivotal experience for me. And then that led, because of my work with suppliers, that led to my only role outside of sustainability in supply chain, working with some of our strategic supply partners on strategic initiatives. And that's where I kind of really cut my teeth on, again, listening, finding common ground, making the whole better than the parts, like, that kind of stuff. And then that led to leading sustainability for our consumer health unit, which is no longer part of Johnson & Johnson, but at the time, the leader of that organization saw sustainability as like, this is an opportunity. We have to be in on this. This is so important to a consumer health business. Day 2 of my job, of my time in this role, I was in Bentonville, listening. I was at one of Walmart's sustainability meetings and learning about the Walmart customer. And again, this also reinforced the importance of listening and being able to put myself in the shoes of a Walmart customer. And again, how do we make the barriers to entry into sustainability something reasonable and doable for that person? Learned so much about listening. And then finally, where I am today, have responsibility for all of the environmental stewardship work and workplace safety and human rights across the entire organization. So now I'm going to transition into some of the projects and initiatives that I've worked on and the lessons that I've learned from them. All right, so my first lesson is sustainability is like building a cathedral. I heard this phrase years ago, this phrase cathedral thinking. And it's based on the experience of the people who built Notre Dame as an example. The people who started working on Notre Dame were not the people who ended working on Notre Dame, that finished Notre Dame. And it took the span of sometimes 100 years to build these cathedrals. And yet the people who started that work and were midway into that work were committed to the vision of what could be. And that so encapsulates how I see sustainability. Kristen called it a marathon, and we're kind of in the middle of that marathon. I think it's like a relay of marathons. And we're each playing our part, hopefully for decades, and then we hand the baton over to someone else who's gonna keep going on for decades. This work is not for the impatient, not for the I need instant gratification. If you're lucky, you may get a catapult moment or two, those moments where things really, really take off and then they plateau for a while and then they take off again. And I'll share a few of those catapult moments that I've been lucky enough to have. But it takes perseverance and tenacity. And sometimes you might feel like you're going backwards. But again, to Kristen's point, when you look back, you see how far you've actually come. So the example that I'm going to share is the decades of time that we have been decarbonizing our business at Johnson & Johnson. I recently found a memo in the files, because I'm working on a little project, a historical project with our librarian, and I found a memo in our files that actually referenced an energy conservation program from the 70s. So to say the least, we have been at this for a really, really long time. I am personally on my 7th set of public-facing environmental goals. And again, to Kristen's point, it's about consistency. It's about setting a set of 5-year goals, setting another set of 5-year goals, and it's not headlines, it's just quietly and consistently and committedly just keep going. Now, some of those catapult moments. I'll point out in 2005, this capital relief program that we developed. We realized that one of the barriers to some of our projects, our decarbonization projects, were that they were competing with other capital projects at a manufacturing site, for example. So a plant manager had to decide, both very financially healthy projects, a decarbonization project, I have to replace my roof. I have to extend a line for production. So what this program did was it set aside some capital to relieve some of that capital pressure on that plant manager so they didn't have to choose between the two. And this really got our projects started, because again, these were really financially strong projects. And now that they didn't have to compete with other capital projects, they started to accelerate. So big catapult moment for us, capital 2. The other catapult moment that I want to point out on here is our first power purchase agreement that we signed. Up until this point, we were building renewable installations at our sites, solar arrays, we have a few windmills, which I love, but it was slow. And we had only gotten to maybe a couple percentage of renewable electricity in our network over like 10 years. We signed one power purchase agreement, and that went up to 20%. We had to adjust our goal in the middle of the goal period because we were going to blow right by it. So catapult moment, new mechanism, a new mechanism called a power purchase agreement where we could buy, not just build, renewable electricity and avail ourselves of that. The other catapult moment, nope, it's not the SBTI goals that we set twice, because we had to set them again when our consumer business separated, was this geothermal well that we drilled in Belgium. So this was kind of our diving in on heat. And we learned so much through this experience. And again, this is also where the cathedral thinking came in. This project started in 2018 and was constructed through COVID. This team, talk about tenacious and perseverance. The amount of obstacles that were thrown at this team, and yet in 2024, I got to cut a ribbon. Fantastic. And then I'll just point out where we are today with that 100% renewable electricity goal. I think we're going to be able to announce we made it. Don't tell anybody yet because we're still verifying it. We're still doing all the math and assuring our data. But that was something, 10, 15 years ago was a 2050 aspiration. And here we are 25 years sooner than that. And it's likely, very likely, highly likely to be a reality. All right, lesson number 2, and I think I have to get going here. Ambition is good, action is better. I like a good BHAG like anybody. I've had plenty of BHAGs in my career. 100%, 0, all, everything, everywhere, 24/7. I've had them all, and they're great. They're inspiring. And sometimes you got to just get going even without one, especially when the progress is so contingent upon external factors. It's a bit easier, even though they're big and bold, it's easier to set big and bold when most of it's in your control. But a lot of that fruit, at least for companies that have been on this journey for a long time, a lot of that fruit's gone. And now we got the stuff that really requires a lot of collaboration, a lot of stakeholders to play their part too. And in the interest of just getting started, you just get started. You don't worry about defining what's the big goal, what does it look like, defining neutrality. Let's just get going. Let's learn and let's move on with it. And this example that I have is our hospital recycling program. Again, pre-COVID and grew through COVID, but started off with one pilot in one hospital, listening to the nursing staff in the operating room where our single-use devices are used. This is our medical technology part of the business, listening to what would work. And if you've heard me talk about this before, you know what's so important with this project, with this initiative, is listening to the nursing staff, because they're the ones that this activity of putting something instead of the red bag where it gets incinerated as medical waste into a blue bin where it might get recycled, just that one extra step could be the thing that breaks the camel's back, right? Because they're already asked to do so much. They're already stressed. So you really have to listen and help them be part of what this looks like. And that takes time. That's like on the ground, in the moment, with the people. And to me, that's the BHAG, right? That's the big unlock, not some big, bold 25-year thing out there, but it's being in those moments, listening and creating something that they truly feel like they can be a part of and will be sustainable for them. And then going to the next hospital and listening to that nursing staff, and so on and so on. Now we have 250 of these programs, and the first in the United States was launched last year. Lesson number 3, moments of change can be moments for progress. We talk a lot about managing change, and there's certainly plenty to manage, certainly plenty of change. But I like to think of it as capitalizing on change. And will you be ready to capitalize on change when those moments reveal themselves to you? To me, this is all about building trust, building relationships, and being ready when a new product is being launched, or a product is being changed for some other customer reason, or you're building a new plant, or you're extending a new line. All of these moments of change, especially in a highly regulated type of an industry, the barrier to change is really high because the cost of change is really high. So when there are these moments of change, something's being changed anyway, that's when the sustainability practitioner has to stick their foot in that door and wedge their way in. But they have to be ready with some solutions because you can't slow things down. So Be ready for these moments of change. I have a person on my team who is just continually looking for new types of material solutions, new types of things that can be integrated when we have that opportunity to integrate them, so we can be fast. So the example for this was when our packaging team came to us, because built a lot of relationships, had a lot of trust, and they knew, oh, we've been asking, we'd like to, change the plastic trays to something more sustainable. Okay, oh, here's your moment. We're gonna redesign the tray. Okay, we knew what we wanted to do, we had a solution, we were able to integrate it right away. And now, over 60% of our plastic trays that our self-injectable devices come in are in paper or fiberboard. But we were ready, and we were invited because we built a lot of trust. Fourth lesson, sustainability is about value and values. The value case, the business case, the ROI, very important, and I hear a lot about it, especially today. A lot of people are focused on how do you ROI, and it is incredibly important. We have to be fiscally responsible, absolutely. And let's not forget, this is also values-based work too. The thing about value, especially value that's based on external stakeholders and their definition of value, that changes, right? That can ebb, it can flow, it can change. Your values do not. And your values kind of take the edge off of that. If you're just kind of following the external environment to define what value looks like, you're gonna be exhausted. But your values should kind of flatten that out a little bit so you can be consistent, so you can persevere, and you have the case to keep going. The example I have here is this project where we designed and built a machine to disassemble our self-injectable devices. So biologics, growing, self-injectable devices, growing. A lot of these are used at home. Patients give themselves an injection at home. We were building a program to collect these self-injectable devices so that we could them. But the other insight is we'd like to use more post-consumer recycled content. But one of the barriers to that in healthcare is the quality, right? It has to be pristine. It has to really be high quality post-consumer recycled content. One way to get the quality higher to where we need it is to disassemble and do better sorting of the materials in the device. That's what motivated us to design and build this machine. Now, we think there's an ROI here. We think this is going to be great for our customers, but this is a huge leap of faith as well. We're learning every day on how to do this. But this is kind of where value and values came together to kind of get this one over the finish line, or at least get the capital appropriation over the finish line. All right. So now's my rapid fire part. See if I can get this done in 3.5 minutes and leave 5 minutes for Q&A. All right. Be passionate about your company's success. Don't forget, sustainability is a three-legged stool. I tell my team all the time, you have to be as passionate about our company's financial success as you are about our sustainability, our environmental success. You work for a for-profit company. You've chosen to do that work at a for-profit company, and that should as equally excite you as all the environmental work that we're doing. Continually read the room. And I mean this one literally and figuratively. If you're in a room with people and you got a bunch of this, or you got a bunch of, and no one's engaging, read the room. If you're explaining, you're losing. But I also mean this on the bigger world stage, context. That's what makes each and every one of us in this room valuable to our companies, by the way. It's not just the environmental knowledge that we bring, it's how we marry that with context, the business context and the external context. Adapting to your context is not wishy-washy. It's being informed and being empathetic, and I would argue effective. Be careful comparing apples. We know we have to be careful comparing apples to oranges, but even within your industry, just be careful. We are like snowflakes. We are all a little different. Your culture makes you different, your leadership makes you different, your portfolio makes you different, your network makes you different. And again, I think that's the beauty in this work. That's the value we bring to the business. We deeply understand our context, which is different than even a peer company's context. Master the art of inquiry. Questions, questions, questions. They're your friend. And this is both when and what kind of questions you ask. I advise my team, ask questions early and often. If you feel like you're in the spin cycle, ask a question, reset the conversation. If you're like, can't get forward, you just keep bucking, ask a question. It immediately opens up the conversation to something different than just reiterating the same points. What questions you ask? This is like Goldilocks, right? Too hot, too cold, just right. Well, same thing with asking questions. If it's too broad, what do you think about sustainability? A person doesn't know what to do with that. Do you think sustainability is the right thing to do? Who's going to say no? Tell me about some of the challenges that you find trying to get a sustainability project get started in your part of the business. Just right. If you're stuck, zoom out. Sometimes our lens is just a little too narrow, and you have to zoom out to see an opportunity to move forward. Personally, I don't think the planet cares where the atom of carbon comes from. And sometimes we just get a little too narrow. I love zooming out. We did this with our capital relief fund that I mentioned earlier. We used to do ROIs had to hit a hurdle just like any project by project. I mentioned we're getting to the hard stuff now. So some projects aren't going to necessarily meet the hurdle. Some are still going to exceed it. So now we zoom out and we manage the financial performance of the portfolio, not just project by project. So again, if you're stuck, try zooming out. You might see opportunities to at least take a step and keep moving forward. Get comfortable with hearing, and this was the hard part for me, saying no. It's not personal, it's practical. Everyone, including us, our business partners, have to make really hard choices. Make sustainability accessible. Our language can keep people out. Our standards can keep people out sometimes. Our goals can intimidate and create a barrier of entry. Just think about all the well-intentioned, aspirational things we want to achieve, and how do we create really practical on-ramps for lots of organizations to participate. Surround yourself with people who make you smarter. I have a social entrepreneur on my team. I have a master of public health on my team. I have a regulatory affairs expert on my team. I have someone from our engineering and property services team on my team. I have purposely brought people on my team to fill blind spots that I and other people on my team have. So together, we cover quite a lot that's going on in the company, but that was deliberate by design, very thoughtfully surrounding ourselves with people who brought something we didn't already, some kind of knowledge, some kind of insight, experience that we didn't already have on the team. And then my last one is ask me anything. You know, I don't think anyone will be surprised when I say we're living in a dynamic time. And there's a lot going on in the external environment, and I have a global team. And it is really important for me to be accessible to my team and for them to feel like they can ask me anything. And I literally host Ask Me Anything sessions so that anyone can show up. And I open these by saying, I have no agenda. We can either sit here in awkward silence staring at each other, or you can ask me questions, because that's what this is meant for. This time is meant for. I also have weekly office hours with my leadership team. Every Monday morning, it's one of my favorite times of the whole week. Every Monday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, my team, we get on a call, and it's like, what's going on, what's going on, what's going on? How do you need help? Who can I help? What do you need? What can I do? Again, I'm making myself as accessible as possible to my team so we stay close and connected and supportive of each other. Alrighty, so with that, I'm going to say thank you. I really appreciate you indulging me to share some of the things I've learned over quite a longer career than I'd like to admit. But I wanted to just reference something I heard in the opening video that really, really resonated with me. Every single person in this room has something remarkable. I have goosebumps when I say this. Remarkable to offer someone else in this room. And it immediately made me think, there are catapult moments in this room right now. They're just waiting for the right people to have the right conversation to reveal themselves to you. So embrace the spirit of this summit. Have a wonderful time. I'm here to learn. And if you want to ask me anything, come find me. Thank you.